Okay, so in this video, we are looking at solving quadratics by completing the square. So we've learned that completing the square can be helpful when that our quadratic equations cannot easily be factored. So we are going to look at how we can use completing the square to help us with that. So to complete the square, we actually have to remove our third term to make a perfect square trinomial. So we are going to actually make a perfect square binomial. So I'm going to do that by just beginning like I'm factoring and knowing what a perfect square is going to be. So I know this will be x squared. And I know that this will have to be 3x and 3x so that I can have a perfect square. So now I can start to find my linear factors x and x. And this will need to be 3 and 3. So my perfect square factor is x plus 3 squared. And this right here will need to be positive 9. But this is a negative 9. Okay, so this is where our solving is going to start to come in. And I'm going to probably need a little extra space, so I'm going to come down here. So when I'm solving, I have x squared plus 6x minus 9. I need to get rid of this piece because I want this to be a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides. So I have x squared plus 6x, and we know that to make this a perfect square trinomial, then I'm going to add a positive 9 here. I already have this positive 9 that I've added to the other side, but I'm also going to add the other positive 9 to balance it out. Okay, so now I have my trinomial on this side, and on the other side, I have my 2 9s that are going to make 18. And when I factor my perfect square trinomial, I have x plus 3 squared. So now we can actually use our square root method. So I'm going to square root my left side. I'm going to square root my right side. I know I have x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 8. Okay, so this gets a little bit more difficult, but you can see how this could not be easily factored. This becomes really important. So plus or minus the square root of 18. Well, our square root of 18 can actually be broken down a little bit more. 9 times 2, and then I have 3 times 3, so I can take out a 3. So really, my square root of 18 can be written as 3 square root of 2. So I have plus or minus 3 square root of 2, and I have x plus 3 on my left side. Okay, so I'm trying to solve for x. So now I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Let me do that in a different color. Subtract 3 from both sides. Okay. Okay, and if I look at this a little bit more, then I no longer have this, and I have x equals negative 3 plus or minus 3 square root of 2. And this really is my solution. So you can see how this could be almost impossible to factor. So square root method, or the completing the square, is a much better choice on that. So let's rewrite that x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the next one. Okay, so I can see on this one, my 100 has already come to the other side, but I also can see that all of this can actually be divided by 4. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to take now I have x squared minus 6x equals 25. Okay, and I'm going to start to look to see what I need to. So I already have this moved to the other side. So I want to make myself a perfect square trinomial on my left side. So I'm going to go ahead and start my area model to make my square. So this will be x squared. This will be negative 3x and negative 3x to make 6x. So this will need to be x minus 3 and x minus 3. So this will have to be 9. Okay, so I'm going to start to rewrite this. So on my left side, my x squared, let's go ahead and just write it first. Add x squared minus 6x equals 25. But now we know that we're going to add 9 to both sides. So I'm going to add 9. So I get 34 on my right side. And when I add 9 to the other side, I know now I can have my linear factors of x minus 3 squared. Okay, so now I can use my square root method and I can square root both sides. So I have x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 34. And I can try to break down the square root of 34 a little bit more, but I actually, when I broke it down when I was going through this myself, it's 17 and 2. So there's nothing I can actually take out of the square root of 34. So I'm actually done with breaking that down. So I don't actually need to break it down. Okay, so to finish this up then, I'm just going to add 3 to both sides. So now I have x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 34. Okay, so our last example of completing the square. Okay, so first I can see that I have a number here in my C term that is not a perfect square. 2 is not a perfect square. So I already know that I need to go ahead and remove that. And we're going to move that to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm going to rewrite this as 9x squared minus 12x equals 13. Okay, we're going to try to make my left side a perfect square trinomial. So I know when I make this a perfect square trinomial, I'll have 9x squared. This will need to be negative 6x and negative 6x. This will have to be 3x and 3x since it's a square. This will need to be negative 2, meaning this will also need to be negative 2. And this will have to be a positive 4 now. So this is the piece I'm adding, my positive 4, and I need to add that to both sides. So I'm going to come down here to add those to both sides. So I know I have 9x squared minus 12x plus 4 equals that 13. And remember, I need to add 4 to 13. So equals 13, and I'm going to add 4 to that. Okay, so then I'm going to rewrite this. So I know if I factor my left side, I have 3x minus 2 squared equals, and 13 plus 4 is 17. I'm going to find the square root of both sides. So now I have 3x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 17. Okay, continuing to solve for x, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So now I have 3x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 17. And I have one more piece I need to take care of. Now I have to divide both sides by 3. So my solution is actually x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 17 all over 3. So x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 17 all over 3. Okay, and this is how you solve quadratic equations by completing the square.